This is the Ivy League Hoops Hour where we cover all things men's basketball in the ancient eight. We are your hub, your go-to, your day one, but not really though. I'm your co-host, Coach Sidney Johnson, former head coach of the Princeton Tigers from 2007 to 2011 and former three-time captain of the Tigers in 95, 96, and 97. And my co-host is Princeton alum and former Princeton graduate assistant coach, Lawrence L. Boogie Schuler. Lawrence, how you making out?
Feeling great, Coach. What's the good word?
Doing great, Lawrence. Can't complain and excited to get another great podcast episode to our listeners. With a reminder, please join our conversation. Tell us where you stand on the topics Lawrence and I cover. Point, counterpoint, suggested guests, trends going on in the Ivy League or college basketball as a whole. We would love to hear from you. So please write into us at ivyleaguehoopshour@gmail.com. And don't forget to spread the word on the show as we look to broaden our base and pull more listeners in to covering Ivy League basketball. Please tell your friends, family, colleagues, encourage them all to find us on Apple and iPad and all that good stuff, Spotify, wherever you find your podcast. Tune into us, I should say, and subscribe. Follow the Ivy League Hoops Hour. We'd love to hear from more folks to join this conversation. Let's get this week's episode started. How about this? Locally, there's a program led by an excellent girls basketball coach by the name of Jason Kirk, and he coaches at Sacred Heart Academy. And they beat a team 92-4 recently. It was a conference game. Yeah, 92-4. I wasn't at the game. I don't know any of the particulars of how the game was played out apart from 92-4. And I believe they were up 50 at half. And I believe the other team scored their 4 points in the fourth quarter. So there were 3 quarters of scoreless play as Sacred Heart is doing their thing. The coach has now been suspended for a game. I believe the Sacred Heart issued an apology to the other school. And in its apology, it said that the way that the game played out and Coach Kirk's leadership goes against the values of Sacred Heart as an institution, and he's suspended for a game. There's been a good amount of outcry. I'm sure it was triggered. Well, I know this whole situation was triggered by the opposing team's reaction to the loss. They contacted the conference commissioner, filed a complaint. And I'm seeing online an article, I believe, by the Hartford Courant, which is a top paper in the state of Connecticut, and the headline is head coach of Sacred Heart Academy owes everyone an explanation and essentially should be ashamed of himself, et cetera, et cetera. I think that any coach in this situation owes absolutely nothing to their opponent, apart from the common respect that you give an opponent in every game, which is, if they happen to fall down, you don't step on them, like you don't, any normally accepted acts of sportsmanship, all of those are assumed. But the score, you're coaching your kids, and you have an obligation to developing your players, and every single one of them, from your star player who plays the most all the way down to someone who maybe just got promoted from JV or is a freshman or never gets to play but always works hard. And you got to get her the same attention and high standards that you give your best player. So for me, I don't understand the reaction to the score. It's a bit much. We've all been there. It's a bit much, but I would assume that the coach was coaching his team as hard as he possibly could, and where it comes into having him being responsible for the other team's performance and how they're feeling and their development and how they're looking at the game of basketball, I don't get. When has that ever been an expectation?
So I think there's something to be said for sportsmanship. Division One men's college basketball is very different from high school girls basketball in the sense that in high school girls basketball you have very competitive varsity teams playing against very weak JV teams on a regular basis. How many 92 to 4 boys basketball games do you see on a regular basis? It's fairly rare, I would say.
You're probably right. You're probably right.
But it's more common, I'd say much more common, to have such lopsided scores in girls basketball. And I say that on the basis of being on the receiving end of 40 and 50-point losses as a girls basketball coach.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I had players who wanted to go on ski trips for 2 weeks during the season and were playing against girls who are committed to Columbia.
Yeah. Right. Right. And so
Right?
there's the disparity. Right.
Yes. And in terms of the participation, and you see it in women's college basketball too, the top teams are loaded with talent, and then there is a steep drop off once you get toward the middle of the pack.
Yeah. You're right. You're right.
Right. One game in particular, this team that has Division One players on it, they were up 60-9 with a little under 2 minutes to go, and they called timeout and they put in a delay set and they dribbled the ball out for the last 90 seconds so that we couldn't score over 10.
Wow.
Yeah, classless.
Wow. That is unbelievable.
The lack of sportsmanship is much more of an issue, I think, in girls basketball than boys basketball, just because of the differences between the teams that you see on a regular basis. And knowing that participation is an issue for girls basketball more so than boys basketball, you can usually field 3 levels for a boys program in a school, and it's a lot harder to get freshman, JV, and varsity for a girls team. It's usually JV and varsity, and sometimes varsity only.
Lawrence, you've really enlightened me in this conversation. You know, I feel very strongly that a coach is 1000% committed, needs to be committed and focused to coaching and preparing their team. But in the context, you've educated me on this, and you're certainly swaying me a bit in terms of how to look at this. I would say that a defining characteristic, and you've helped me come to this realization right now, is a certain level of sportsmanship that is assumed in the college game. And that when we do go over that line, we all know it. We're called to task for the most part. And, you know, it's just not appreciated. And it seems to me you're helping me, and this is through your lens, which I trust, you know, because it's based on experience. It seems like that doesn't quite exist in high school basketball, girls basketball, and that certainly then says to me now I'm looking at 92 to 4 in a much different context.
A couple years ago, we played a boys' game against a team that was pretty down that year, and we were up like 30 going into the fourth quarter. And Frank says to them, to our team, sometimes you're the dog, and sometimes you're the tree. Right.
Right.
So we're gonna play. We're gonna play the way we know how. Like we're gonna play our game, but we're not gonna go on fast breaks. We're not looking at double team. Like, we're just gonna play it straight up, and then work on what we need to do.
And so in that sense, is he teaching them a level of sportsmanship that will apply, I'm just thinking developmentally, like apply to any of these youngsters as they go on to college, but then also just in life as a whole? I think I can answer that question. But then how would you respond to someone saying, hey, but you're teaching someone to take their foot off the gas and not be their absolute best at all times? How would you respond to that?
I would say we just proved we can do our absolute best for the first 3 quarters. And trying to clown the other team is not a virtue. It's not a skill to show someone else disrespect.
Yeah, but someone might counter, but respect the game. You're playing the game, and maybe there's someone at the end of the bench who needs to be their absolute best, and give them those fourth quarter minutes and let them go all out.
Well, that's what we did. Yeah, we'll put those guys in and say play the way you know how. But the rules apply to you too. Don't be cherry picking, saying we can give up points, and not play the way we're supposed to play, just because we have the freedom to do whatever we want up 30.
Yeah, yeah, it's an interesting conundrum, but I've never coached high school sports, and it's not something that I wouldn't be open to. But I think that you've appraised me of some challenges that frankly, we just don't deal with that as much in college. And when they do, when it happens, there's some conversation, some real conversation. What would you say if I were a high school administrator talking to one coach who's the 4 point team and the other coach who's coaching the 92 point team before the game, and saying, and I don't know what setting, on the phone, whatever, the day before, whatever, but saying, hey, this game could be questionable. Can we agree that whatever the final result is, we're going to shake hands and be fine with it? Or do we want to agree to a way to, if this gets out of hand, that we're calling this game early? How would you respond as a coach to that?
Well, I had this conversation. We had only 5 girls in school that day, and so I called the opposing AD because I'm also one of the administrators. And I said, "Well, listen, I don't know if you want to postpone the game or if you want to play it out, but just knowing that we only have 5 kids in uniform, today would be a good day to bring your JV kids. Competitively, it's not going to be very close."
Wow. Okay.
Right?
You had that conversation. You took
Yes.
the initiative on your own.
Yes, because
Coach
it's a
slash
question of
administrator.
yes.
Okay.
And the AD said, "I'll talk to our coach. I'll let him know what the situation is." And their coach played it close. When they went up, he rotated some players in, got some game experience for some girls who don't play as much, and in the end, both sides were happy with the game. We lost by I don't know, like 10, 15 or something like that. But in the moments that it was competitive, our players felt like we played a game that we can be proud of because we all put in a good effort and we played together, and we gave ourselves even the slightest chance, right? And the other team, they won the game the way they were supposed to. And afterward, I thanked their coach and their AD. Their AD was like, "He's like, oh no, no, of course."
Hmm. This is
So,
fascinating to me. This is really fascinating to me. Like the assumption of a level of sportsmanship that I have had in my head that I assumed applied to high school sports is being shattered right now, and I'm kind of stunned. So you can be win at all costs in college. God knows you and I know enough to know that there are win at all costs coaches in college, but there's also a certain level of understanding in terms of how they interact with the opponent. Okay. If you don't have that understanding in high school, it seems to me you might wind up winning a game 92-4.
yes,
And so there you have it. It's a circular way of getting to our point. And I don't mean to criticize the coach. I actually know him personally. And I think we're on good standing. I have no issue with him. I don't think he has any issue with me. But not knowing anything about the game, I'll say again, I actually applaud him coaching his team extremely hard from what I can tell from that score. But based off of this conversation and some of the things you've helped me out with, I maybe am a little bit more equipped to call attention to a lack of understanding of how to approach it from a sportsmanship aspect. Being newcomers to podcasting ourselves, Lawrence and I want to bring your attention to a podcast that we have come to enjoy. Although they occasionally get to the pop culture or sports they claim to cover, Noah Savage spends most of his time on the World According to Noah Savage podcast, telling stories about himself, and tries to keep his wife and fellow comedian Alyssa Wolf from falling asleep. Whether it's bombing horribly on a stand up show, getting a technical foul in a men's league game, or explaining why he had dog poop on his shoe in a work meeting, Noah and Alyssa truly never run out of things to tell each other on this hilarious weekly podcast, available on Spotify, iTunes, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. We encourage you to check them out. Now, let's get back to the Ivy League Hoops Hour. This week's guest on the Ivy League Hoops Hour has starred for Brown since his 2017 arrival to the Providence, Rhode Island campus. A freshman year highlighted by several Ivy Rookie of the Week honors was followed by back-to-back second-team All-Ivy honors in his sophomore and junior campaigns. As a highly coveted transfer recruit in this new world of college basketball, our guest chose to remain at Brown during the suspended COVID season of 2021, earn his degree, and lead the Bears this season in an unprecedented role as a graduate student playing in the Ivy League. And good thing for Brown, because this young man in uniform has scored in double figures in 6 of his last 7 games and has exploded for 51 points in his last 2 games. We'll get into his decision to remain at Brown and much more with our distinguished guest, Brown Bears standout, Tamenang Choh. Tamenang, welcome to the show.
Thank you guys for having me. Appreciate it. Looking forward to it.
Absolutely. We're always joined week to week with my co-host, Lauren Schuler, but he's on deck. And I just wanted to talk to you, Tamenang, first about your roots, a little bit about your background. You graduated from the Brooks School, a prep school located in North Andover, Massachusetts. And I saw that you led your team to an undefeated record in your last season there, winning the New England Prep School Class B championship. Now, Tamenang, we had Penn's Jelani Williams on the show, and so he talked a lot about the D.C., Maryland, Virginia hoops areas being ultra competitive. In my experience, the NEPSAC has a similarly ultra competitive, well-coached, and well-supported background environment. So I just want to know how you found competing in the NEPSAC night in and night out and your experience at the Brooks School as a player.
The NEPSAC is full of just talent since my freshman year when I got in there, from the top of the league with the AAAs to, even the mid-tier guys and mid-tier level teams and bottom-tier guys. It's just full of talent and Division I guys and a bunch of pros coming out of NEPSAC. So it was definitely an excitement to get into that league, and it's definitely going to be standing there as one of the best leagues for a long time.
What do you think was the effect that it had on you as a player in terms of your development? You really probably couldn't take any nights off, any games off. I would imagine even any practices off. But how did that play a role in terms of your growth as a player?
Initially, especially my freshman year of high school, it was like a kind of wake up call. Like, I'm not that good, coming from 8th grade. You think you're pretty good coming from your city. But, being in NEPSAC, being at Brooks, it was definitely a wake up call. And, I was just excited to even make the varsity team at that point. Just a bunch of guys with a bunch of talent who work extremely hard, and that was kind of the wake-up call for me, at least, to just letting me know that I have a long way to go before I want to be where I want to be.
Sure. And then while at the school, obviously more than just a basketball player, you were voted by your classmates as senior head prefect. Can you talk to us about your responsibilities in that role and how did that play out in your day-to-day?
Pretty much what that was I was kind of like the middleman between the student body, the students, and our head of school. I guess, like, another word for that is like the principal, like the president of the school. So I would just communicate with him back and forth in terms of like what the student body, the students wanted for the year, and vice versa in terms of like what head of school kind of wanted from the students. I also would run school meetings every Friday and just kind of like make announcements, make fun videos for our school meetings, make it a little bit entertaining for the kids. And that was kind of really what it was, nothing much more than that.
But I would say a lot in terms of kind of widening your lens and having you think about things much more beyond yourself. Like those are the kind of the formative experiences for leadership and kind of being a voice for others. Is that fair to say?
Oh no, yeah, 100%. It was definitely. I mean, coming into Brooks, my freshman year, I was kind of a little bit uncomfortable. It was kind of a culture shock for me, but Brooks really took me under their wing. Showed me the ropes, the seniors my freshman year, and eventually I was obviously able to kind of fit into that leadership role. And student bodies trusted me with that. I had great relationships with people. I was able to learn how to communicate with a bunch of different cultures, a bunch of different people. That's something that I would take away from Brooks for the rest of my life, as you said. But yeah, no, it was definitely a great experience, a great way for me to, step into a leadership position for the first time. And I hope I did a good job.
I'm sure you did. I'm sure you did. And now you take that growth and those experiences. Wonderful job there in terms of the Brooks School preparing you for an Ivy League setting in Brown. And now you and your teammates, you guys, let's think about today where you're on break from classes, maybe a fewer games, although we are leading into Ivy League play. But what are some of the interests that you have away from the court? And Lawrence and I were looking a bit at your background and seeing that you're interested in acting and piano. And Lawrence, I know that he and I were going back and forth in terms of what does this young man not do?
No, I wouldn't say all that. The acting and piano I took an acting class my senior year at Brooks, and I loved that class. It was Mr. Lazare, so that's kind of I guess where that comes from. But my undergrad at Brown, I did business economics, and that was something I was really really interested in coming into Brown, and even leaving or not leaving, but graduating from Brown after my senior year. Just the whole business entrepreneurship atmosphere is something I've always wanted to be a part of, and was really interested in. So I was happy to be able to do that with my bachelor's at Brown. Now my master's program, public affairs. So that's something I'm not really familiar to, but I'm learning each and every single day with a bunch of people within our program who have a lot of experience in public affairs and kind of teaching me the ropes and showing me or telling me stories about their past experiences and how I'm able to incorporate that into my life and to my future, whatever I want to do once basketball is all done.
Terrific. Lawrence, anything?
I'd like to get into what's the vibe on campus and among the team. You guys are on break right now between semesters, right?
Yes, sir. Yeah, we are. I'm not gonna lie. This nice little break has been amazing. With the master's program, schooling, and practice and everything between. It was a lot for sure during the first semester. So this break's been really nice. We just spent New Year's Eve with each other in Philly. First Penn, we had a little karaoke night, which was unplanned. It just randomly happened. So, this group of guys, I love every single one of them. It's been the closest group I've ever been a part of since I've been at Brown. So we've been having fun with each other and, just taking advantage of the free time we have.
What did you sing at karaoke night?
What did I sing at karaoke night? I sung a song by me and my teammate. We made a song together. So that's kind of what we were singing. I don't think you guys are familiar, but me and Josh Watts, he has a lot of music background, so I was able to do a song with him. Just a little, team fun activity type thing.
Okay. Can we get a little sampling right now?
I don't know about that. I can't give it to you for free. Now, joke. One day maybe.
I like that business degree has gone. that has kicked in already. Well played, young man. Well played.
Yes, sir.
That's phenomenal. And I have to attach that camaraderie that I can just hear through the phone in the sense of like how close you are with your teammates. Was that a big component of wanting to come back and play for the Brown Bears as a graduate student?
Oh yeah, for sure. The past couple years, whatever, we've been growing with each other through the ups and the downs. And I had roommates who I lived with, and they were also in my ear a lot when the decision came down to if I wanted to come back or not. So they definitely had a big influence on my decision. So yeah, no, that was definitely a key part. The companionship that we have in terms of coming back.
What is it about teammates that you become like family? Walk our listeners through that. I've experienced that. My college teammates are like brothers to me to this day, Tamenang. And what is it? How is that forged through competition in basketball, and particularly your experience with Brown basketball?
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, you think about it, we're spending more time with each other than we do with our own families, with our own parents. Whether it's practice, it's, studying together, it's, getting food together and, going through losses together, going through wins together, going through suicides together when everyone's tired, picking each other up, stuff like that. You get closer through experiences. It's easy to say, yeah, we're a team, and this and that. But when get knocked down and, you got other people to rely on, and when things are getting tough, whether it's through exams, through stuff, even going back at home, you got people on your team who, you can talk to about stuff that's going on, and, just going through that experience together, especially, coming in as a freshman, this is first time for some guys that they're away from home, and, being able to do that together, it's what really brings you guys closer.
So with that in mind, there was some doubt with the Ivy League. There was a COVID year, obviously, an athletic competition is suspended. And then there was a bit of uncertainty as to whether student athletes would be granted an additional year to compete. That uncertainty, and then knowing also the tie or experiencing the tie that you had with your teammates, how difficult was it for you to sit and wait to know if you could, in fact, even come back to Brown to compete? And then also, how close were you saying, hey, you know what, throw your hands up, like, if I'm going to be sitting here waiting all day, maybe I need to look into other schools. How close were you to winding up at a different institution?
Yeah, it was to be quite frank, it was extremely frustrating time. Mentally, I was, moved on. I didn't really think that they were going to give us an extra year. So I already put my name in the portal, been talking to coaches and everything. And then they or the Ivy League gave us the year, or announced that they were going to give us another year pretty late, in my opinion. And that was kind of sad because I know a bunch of people, even in my class, who wanted to come back or who would have thought about coming back if they would have known prior to when the Ivy League announced it, but they've already committed to, jobs or already committed to going to another school. So that was kind of disappointing to see. But, I'm just happy that they gave us a chance to, and, I'm just happy to be able to take advantage of it.
Do you remember the first person you called when you got the news that you could return to Brown?
I think it was my AU coach, Vince Story, from Mass Rivals. He was one of the key points of just helping me come to Brown as a senior in high school or junior in high school. So I definitely called him and just wanted to hear what he had to say, because he was already helping me out with the transfer process in the first place. And then once the news came out with Ivy, he was one of the first people I called.
I have one more question as it relates to that recruiting process. I've worked in mid-major outside of the Ivy League, and I've worked in high major outside the Ivy League. And respectfully, I would say it's a little different world than the Ivy League,
For
and
sure.
so,
yes, sir.
You can name names or you can keep it anonymous, but just in terms of the different types of approaches to basketball and recruiting and what teams offer you and talk to you about that are not like an Ivy League approach. Anything come to mind that was uniquely different as you were talking to different coaches and programs?
It was an extremely tough time, obviously, because of COVID too. So I wasn't really able to, visit schools on their campuses. So everything was just via Zoom. But so that was kind of tough. But other than that, like, just being able to see the difference in facilities, the difference in, like, catered meals and flights and all that stuff, all the good stuff, that was kind of one of the things I kind of took away from that in terms of the glamorous stuff. But yeah, that was probably one of the things.
And yet you came back to Brown, and I don't think you're thinking twice at all. That's pretty impressive. Let's talk about some basketball in terms of this tough schedule that you guys have had. Creighton, Colorado, Syracuse, Maryland, Vermont. These are teams that have won lots and lots of games over the years, and you teed off against all of them. You only lost to Colorado by 2. You were leading at North Carolina on national TV at halftime. You only lose that game by 7. You were leading at Maryland, and you had 18 first half points. Is this the toughest non-conference schedule you've played during your career? And then I'll tack on the late and great Nelson Mandela was quoted as saying, "I never lose, I either win or learn." And so tell me, with all these tough matchups, what have you learned as a player, and what do you think your team has learned from these games?
Yeah, for sure. No, well, to answer your first question, yeah, this is for sure the toughest non-conference schedule we've had. And that's, part of the reason why, I wanted to come back and, just participate in those type of games. But although, the injury kind of held me back a little bit, but nonetheless, those games really spoke volumes in terms of, how good our team could be, the potential we have to compete with those teams and, win those games, although that wasn't necessarily always the case. But I think the biggest things we'll take away, and obviously you don't want, moral victories. You want a real win, but, the biggest things we could take away from that is just how good our team is, how good our players are, and then learning from that and, learning from the film from that and being able to apply that into conference play, because of course winning those games and, losing the Ivy League, that doesn't help us at all. So we're able to take away from those games and apply that into the conference play. So, we can hopefully win our tournament, our league, and get that banner on the wall and make it to the NCAA tournament.
I want to remind our listeners, your defense has been outstanding, and Tamenang is obviously your first time on the show, but we've been talking about you guys a lot in terms of having the best defensive efficiency in the league. You're ranking in the top amongst teams' defensive efficiency nationally as well. You're the only team in the league to hold opponents to less than a point per possession on the road. You've got Jalen Gainey, I'm sure a close teammate of yours, Defensive Player of the Year from a couple seasons ago and likely to be that this year. On-ball defenders like yourself and David Mitchell and Kimo Ferrari, those guys kind of jump out to me when I'm watching film. The numbers, what I see on film, the individual recognition, you guys defensively are very, very good. But what is the secret sauce? Like, what is it about your team chemistry and spirit that has you guys defending so well?
To be honest, probably, our head guy, Coach Martin, since day one, that's kind of been his emphasis and having that being our identity of being a good defensive team. Since my freshman year, really, I feel like we've always been a good defensive team. So, and in terms of just the guys, just following his leadership and, trusting what he's saying and, applying that onto the court, we got to give credit to him more than anything.
Okay.
Him and the coaching staff, of course.
Okay. And how about credit to you guys from the standpoint of, there's not a lot of glory in defending, there's not a ton of stats. There's obviously rebound steals and there's some, hidden analytics in there, but there's a common will to kind of stick together and say, hey, we're just going to do this because. And it seems to me maybe the chemistry that you guys have off the court helps you guys dig in and battle defensively together on the court. Am I making too much of that, or does that seem right?
No, you're 100% right. Team chemistry is big. Team chemistry off the court translates to, you're being on the same page on the court, whether it's defensively or offensively. So no, you're 100% right.
Well, Tamenang, we really greatly appreciate your time, and you're a wonderful young man and a heck of a player, as we know. I know that you're gearing up for making this great top four run that you're expecting to have and find your team in the Ivy Madness. But before we let you go, we applaud you for everything you've done on the court and off the court and working towards your master's degree. But let us know straight from yourself, just looking forward, what would you like to see from Brown basketball, Brown University, Ivy League athletics, or throughout the league as a collection of elite academic institutions? You have a first person's perspective in terms of seeing the world of Ivy League and Ivy League athletics. Is there anything that you would like to see in the near future come to fruition?
The first thing that, pops to my mind easily is, just getting our athletes, because, we work as hard as any other conference, but we don't have athletic scholarships because of, I'm not sure if a lot of people know, but maybe, your listeners can kind of do their research on it, but antitrust exemption, which keeps the Ivy League, allows the Ivy League not to give, their athletes scholarships. We're the only conference in the country that doesn't give athletic scholarships to their players. So I feel like if the Ivy League can, progress to being able to do that and, give our athletes that opportunity to, be on a scholarship, I feel like, that'd be a great opportunity for, not only the athletes, but the Ivy League as a whole in terms of, getting better athletes, getting better student athletes moving forward. I feel like that'd be a great thing.
Do you feel that those opportunities to earn a scholarship would allow a wider range of student athletes to possibly entertain the possibility of going to an Ivy League? Is that one of the natural outcomes of a change in rule?
Yes, sir. 100%. And, Ivy League has, done a great job over the years in terms of getting, a diverse student body and, each of the Ivy League schools. But, there for some people or some student athletes, the opportunity doesn't always present itself because for the middle class student athlete or even the lower class student athlete, even if they get an abundance amount of, financial aid, they might not be able to cover, their whole 4-year tuition. They might rather just go to another school where they can, get an education for free as opposed to having their parents, help pay for their education or even taking out a loan. So I feel like being in the scholarship would help them to, make an easier decision to, maybe get some generational wealth in terms of, using their Ivy League degrees to get a great job and, be able to support their families or whatever the case may be. I just think an athletic scholarship doesn't mean that better athletes and worse students will come in. I think it'd be even better students and even better athletes, more diverse pool of people to choose from. So that's just my opinion on it. And, something I would love to see change in the near future.
Well, Tamenang, your humility shines all the way through this interview. I have to say that. But at the same time, you have a lot to be proud of in terms of what you've accomplished, your character, and what you will soon accomplish as not only as a graduated Brown man, but one with a graduate master's degree as well. So we applaud you and expect great things for you this season and beyond. I really, really appreciate your time. Join us on the Ivy League Hoops Hour. Thanks a lot, Tamenang.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you guys so much for having me and even thinking of me.
It's time for predictions.
Predictions, Pat.
On Friday, January 7th, 7 p.m. tip-off, Harvard at Brown. Coach, who you got?
This is a tough one, Lawrence, and it's certainly the game of the day for me and possibly the best game of the weekend with an eye towards that Cornell at Princeton matchup as well. But let's try to tease this one out. Amaker has done a terrific job. He squeezed everything he can out of an injury-ravaged roster. Okay, no bigs all season long. No Justice Ajagbor, no Josh Hemmings, no Mason Forbes. And yet they're sitting at 8-4 on the season, albeit for a pretty soft schedule. 3 wins versus non-Division I teams, but the bottom has not fallen out despite those injuries. You know how highly I rate Brown. Their defense is tremendous, and I was a bit surprised that they weren't able to win at Penn, and we'll get into that. Penn played very well and was extremely well prepared and coached to hold court against Brown in the opener. If a strong season doesn't prepare you for conference play, then, I don't know. I think Brown, they have the edge in terms of, who they've played. They faced off against North Carolina and Maryland, played them fairly closely. They were losses. They lost by a couple points against Colorado. I think that stronger schedule and the stout defense that I've highlighted with Brown all season long. I'm saying the Brown Bears end the skid, Lawrence. They've rattled off 4 losses in a row, and I think they're going to beat Harvard at home.
Next up, we've got Columbia at Princeton.
Yeah, I think Columbia, their best part of their team, they've got a couple of freshmen who are playing very good basketball. Murphy, we've talked about him earlier in the season. Rubio De La Rosa, dynamic point guard, really prefers, he'll pass the ball, but really prefers to score and has a knack for it. And Patrick Harding has been the man in the middle for the Lions. But all that being said, they're dead last in offensive efficiency on the road, and they're coming in at 0.872 points per game. Their offense just doesn't travel well, Lawrence. So I would just say, dealing with the best team in the league in Princeton and already struggling to score on the road, I think Princeton beats Columbia in a convincing manner.
And to round out the Friday schedule, we've got Cornell at Penn.
Yeah, Cornell's got a whole lot of weapons. We know that, and they're scoring a ton of points. And it's nice to see when they have the national TV games, they play pretty well. They actually made about a 3 or 4 possession game down the stretch against Syracuse. But the telecast spent a lot of time highlighting the pace of play and having one of the highest scoring offenses in the country in terms of the Cornell Big Red. Cornell's going to challenge that young roster of the Quakers. I'm curious to see how Penn functions offensively. I've talked about how well they're coached by Steve Donahue, and it's a very team-oriented style. And Cornell, not only their offensive pace, Lawrence, but their defense, full court pressure on made and missed baskets, run and scramble, run and jump, I should say, and scramble a bit defensively. They're going to try to provoke the Quakers to play more in a one-on-one style instead of their team-oriented style. I'm going to give a small or a slight nod to Cornell in a very close game. I think the Big Red will come out on top.
And now moving into the Saturday schedule, we've got Columbia at Penn.
Yeah, I think Penn beats Columbia because their belief in themselves after a brutal non-conference schedule. It so very well prepared them to deal with Brown. That was a very good win for the Quakers. And they're battle tested, even though those are losses in terms of that non-conference schedule. They know they've played good teams. They know how hard they needed to play. They took care of Brown. I think they come up short just maybe by a basket against Cornell. And then Saturday, they come back and get back on the good side of things. They beat Columbia. It might not be an easy win, but Penn outlasts Columbia at the end of the day on Saturday.
Next up, Brian Earl leads the Big Red on the road at Princeton.
Should be an exciting game. And yeah, there'll be some interesting feelings, but not obviously the first time that Coach Earl has returned to Jadwin Gym as the head coach of the Cornell Big Red, but probably the first time with an outstanding basketball team. So what a matchup this will be. High-powered offense. We've talked about Cornell all season long, but folks, the Tigers are the best team in the league. They have skyrocketed in terms of their offensive production. Lawrence, they rank 21st in overall offensive efficiency in the country. The Tigers are coming in at 1.103 points per game. They rank 11th in effective field goal percentage, combination of made twos and the added value of made threes. The Tigers are flat out making shots. So neither Columbia on Friday or Cornell have enough defense, I think, to deal with the Tigers at Jadwin. Princeton goes 2-0 for the weekend.
And the nightcap on Saturday, 7 p.m. tip-off, Brown at Dartmouth.
Should be interesting, and I'm going to say this, Lawrence. The Big Green, they've lost 8 straight games, so their back is going to be against the wall. Brown's defense, and the athleticism, the depth that Mike Martin has put together is certainly going to be a challenge. But I think this season, home court is going to be a great an immense advantage from start to finish. Lawrence, I've known the league since 1993, as a student athlete, as a coach, and a close observer. I believe this is going to be the most competitive season ever. Dartmouth is going to be desperate for a win. Brown might relax a bit too much after what I predict is a win versus Harvard. And so I'm guessing, and I'm going with Dartmouth beating Brown at Lead Arena and Hanover for their first Ivy win of the season.
And rounding out the weekend on Sunday, 2 p.m. tip-off on ESPNU, Yale comes out of quarantine to play Harvard.
Lawrence, if this game is even played, I'm going to be shocked. You and I were texting each other back and forth as we saw that now Yale has its second league game canceled already due to COVID issues within their program. They had that January 7th game against Columbia. That was a no-go, and now, their Dartmouth matchup on January 7th is canceled. So why the league didn't announce the cancellation of this one, Harvard and Yale, we know it's the game from football, and that's a signature matchup. But maybe, possibly, COVID protocols will clear, enough for Yale players to return, I'm guessing, or that Yale-Harvard game, as I said, it's scheduled for broadcasting on ESPNU, linear platform. Possibly the league is trying to hold on to a prime opportunity to showcase the conference in front of a national audience and not be too quick to cancel it. I don't know. Either way, Lawrence, I'm not sky high on the Bulldogs just yet this season. And it doesn't help that Harvard has won 8 of their last 10 matchups against Yale. Harvard has a top 100 defense in the country in terms of efficiency, points per possession, but again, trumped up from a very soft schedule. But then you counter that with Yale is the second worst shooting team in the league in terms of effective field goal percentage. And stunningly, they are not dominating the boards, which is what James Jones's most competitive teams have always done. They actually rank lower than Harvard's 5-guard lineup in terms of overall rebounding rate. Harvard feels invincible against Yale, and I'm calling another win for the Crimson. I'll be prepared to eat crow, all right, and prove me wrong next week. We can talk about that. But I think Yale comes up short and Harvard gets it done if, in fact, this game is played. All right, Lawrence, those are my picks for the upcoming games. I want to hear what winners you have.
Predictions, Pat.
From the top, I've got Brown over Harvard, Princeton over Columbia, Cornell over Penn, Penn over Columbia, Princeton over Cornell, Brown over Dartmouth, and to round out the weekend, Yale over Harvard.
Those are our picks for the week, and we'll continue to do so from week to week. Our best guesses, folks, so don't put too much money on these picks. Lawrence and I are pouring over film and the analytics and really getting a great feel for these teams and their strengths and their weaknesses, but things change. So this is what it's looking like for us, but we are going to keep a tally, a ledger, and see who comes out on top between myself and Lawrence. We'll see how that works. I hope you join in week to week.
And now it's time for our non-Ivy League nod of the week. Coach, who you got?
I've got Drew Valentine, Lawrence. He's doing an excellent job as the current head coach at Loyola Chicago. The Ramblers are 9-2 with their strength of schedule, ranking in the top 40 in all of Division I NCAA basketball. Valentine knows the league very well, the Missouri Valley, because he played as a student athlete at Loyola Chicago. And so he'll use a signature win versus Arizona State. They thumped them pretty well earlier this season, plus a single possession loss, Lawrence, to Michigan State. He'll use that, I think, as fuel towards their pursuit of an NCAA tournament berth in 2022. Well done, Drew Valentine.
And now let's spread some love throughout the Ivy League. Coach, what are you hearing out there?
Oh, my favorite, Black Eyed Peas. Where is the love? Where is the... Okay, I'll stop. Spare our listeners. But this is one of my favorite segments of the week as we spread the love throughout the league and highlight some teams that are not playing basketball, but some of the myriad other sports that are showcased in the Ancient Eight. Well, here this week, we're going to tip our hat to the Princeton women's volleyball team as they recently accepted a verbal commit from Ava Harrington from Episcopal High School in Houston, Texas, Lawrence. True basketball fans should recognize that last name, Harrington, alongside that Houston connection, as Ava is the daughter of former Houston Rocket, former Georgetown Hoya legend, and former McDonald's All-American Othello Harrington. Ava chose Princeton over a slew of Power 5 scholarship offers and gives Tigers head coach Sabrina King, a highly touted recruit, to assist the program in their pursuit next season of a fifth Ivy championship in the past 7 years. Well done, Coach Sabrina King. Congrats to Ava Harrington, and we're spreading love to Princeton women's volleyball. Well, Lawrence, I think that wraps it up for this week's episode.
Oh, listen, one more thing. It'll just take a second.
What do you have on the docket this week? Are you calling any games?
As a matter of fact, Lawrence, glad you asked. I'm actually covering an A10 matchup on USA Network this Saturday, 2 p.m., the VCU Rams at LaSalle. So I'll make a drive down to Philly Friday and cover the game Saturday as I keep an eye on all these Ivy League games as well.
Awesome. Well, I'll be tuning in.
Great, Lawrence. I hope that you do, and I encourage our listeners to join me on television as well. And please continue to join me and Lawrence week in and week out on the Ivy League Hoops Hour. Know that we have a YouTube channel as well, creatively titled the Ivy League Hoops Hour YouTube channel. So you can find us there. And then obviously, podcasting-wise, Spotify, iTunes, wherever you get your podcast content. Join me and Lawrence as we cover all things men's basketball in the Ancient Eight. What a wonderful interview we had with Tamenang Choh. We'll have plenty more interviews like that, and of course, cover the ups and downs, ins and outs of the Ivy League season as it plays out. Also, write into us at ivyleaguehoopshour@gmail.com to share your thoughts, opinions, feedback, suggested guests, the whole gamut, as Lawrence and I try to bring you the best that the Ivy League has to come for the rest of the season. Please join us next week.
I predict that Daniel Day-Lewis will receive the Oscar for Best Actor of the Year and will be revered worldwide as the best actor in the world. Bye-bye.